and welcome to the fourth and final Alumni Enrichment Breakfast for this year. We'll be starting up this program again next year around springtime, so please keep an eye out for those emails. Today we've got a great program for you on technology enhanced learning, being facilitated by two NYU higher ed administrators. Marley Leekant, who is also an MSBA graduate, who is the Executive Director for Finance and Management, and Brianna Bates, who's the Associate Director for Academic Program Review and Assessment. So with that, I will turn it over to Marlene.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this morning. It's early and it's rainy and it's not pleasant outside, but thank you so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. So today we're going to talk about technology and enhanced learning, and there's three aspects to this that we're going to talk about today. The first one is building. Technology can be done in higher ed, can be done in so many different ways, and right now it's such a trending topic for innovative ways to how do you implement technology into your education units. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about the support systems that you build and you put into place for faculty, your stakeholders, your students, things like that. And then we're also going to talk about how do you regulate all that and navigate the waters that come with it of operating outside of your home school and your home state. So a little bit about me before I go into this. I'm a graduate from here, but when I started my higher education degree, I was actually in corporate. And before that, I was teaching mainly in special ed. But I knew I wanted to stay in education, but not in special ed. So I came back to do my higher education degree because I wanted to be in a university setting. And so I found that trying to get into a university setting without a university background or the credentials to do so was very, very difficult, right? So, the best part of my new hire at NYU 7 years ago was that my corporate background, where I had a lot of business acumen and a lot of corporate client management, was what got me my new position. I was hired into a startup unit to build new areas for growth, and one of them was business growth for corporate partnerships. And so this is how I was transitioned into a role to build a brand new unit that was supporting growth areas. One was online learning, one was for the business side as well. Online learning was the umbrella of our unit, but this was not an initiative that came from the university or our institution. What was happening was units, different areas of School of Engineering was taking on these initiatives on their own. Faculty were driving the need or the want to just use technology in some way. They were starting very, very low, where they're introducing clickers into their classrooms, so they're polling students and you have a clicker in front of you and you're just giving them survey questions as, okay, what's your choice? So that was like the very first iterations of technology. But the thing is, when you're doing something like that, you're taking it upon yourself. This is just faculty driven. They're not prioritizing technology. So looking at the faculty drives to the academic drives, and then having a unit that prioritizes technology or online learning itself, there's really different variations to how you can evolve in online learning. So if a faculty is driving online learning, it's very ad hoc. What's happening is they are doing this on their own. They don't know what resources are available for them at their school. They don't know what's available in the industry of online learning themselves, and they're taking this on, sacrificing maybe other work, and they're not getting course relief or things like that. If an academic department is driving this initiative, they still have these same challenges. They don't have the support in front of them that's best practices. They may not have funding to support either new faculty for teaching online, developing online, or to give course relief, so that means on-campus classes will suffer, or other areas where they're not sure about this space. That's where an online unit can play a big role in resolving a lot of these challenges. My unit we take on the responsibilities of being subject matter experts in technology, pedagogy, funding, all of the smart business practices that go into prioritizing an initiative that's supposed to grow the university in a different realm. This is a different revenue stream for our school. And you're going to hear me talk a little bit about revenue and growing enrollments. We are a revenue generating unit. So my business side is what drives this very, very heavily. So our unit, this is sort of just a quick look at, and really, really just one-line headers of what our unit is. We have a lot of different sectors and a lot of different roles. We are supportive for faculty, for the leadership, for students, and we follow each one of these stakeholders throughout the whole process, and we give them a priority of what their initiatives are with us. We also developed our own mission and vision for our unit, mainly because we live in this gray space where we're not an academic unit, but we're also not a service unit like IT either. We do concentrate on pedagogy as well, so we want to make sure that us as an online, in the online industry, we do brand ourselves. We're NYU Tandon Online. We are known very well in the online learning world. We attend lots of different conferences and training programs. I was just in Orlando 2 weeks ago at the Online Learning Consortium Conference, which is the annual conference that has about 2,500 attendees each year. There was 12 of us that went down from just our unit and 10 presentations from just us alone. So we are very heavily involved in trying to brand ourselves, be globally reputable for the education we do online, and also to be innovative in the practices that we do as well. I didn't even know there was. I didn't know this was there. No, okay. I think it's my own fault. So this is actually our unit. Yeah, there you go. It's really large. When I started this in this department, I was hired by my vice dean, and it was just me and him. Then we hired a sales guy because business growth was an important part of the growth opportunities for us as well. So that's 3 in 2 months. Today there's 20 of us. There's 35 with our student workers. I'm going to talk a little bit about what each of these areas mean, because what our unit does, and especially the way it lives in a university, is a little different than I think many of you, if you're in higher ed, you will be used to, because I think there's a lot of funding issues, and we're going to talk about that too, because that's a lot of the questions I get. How do you pay for all of this? And everybody wants to know how we pay for all of it. So, our leadership. And majority of these leaders don't actually live in our department, but they are our stakeholders. And we've developed our leadership in a certain way, so that way we could do the activities we want and take the initiatives that we want, because we're not academically driven. As not being an academic department, we have a lot of challenges because our academics have a lot to say. So what we've done is develop these faculty committees. They provide our oversight and sort of take the best practices we would like to take as new initiatives, whether they are going into our faculty contracts for developing, whether they're standards we want people to use, so faculty to use in teaching methods. We can't exactly say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, you're now going to teach this class. You have to do these things. We get our oversight committees that are faculty driven. These are their peers, these are their department chairs, and they actually make that mandate on our behalf. So when we have this drive, faculty committees say yes to what we want to do. The department chairs then take it back to their departments and say, this is what you need to do if you're teaching online. The vice deans also make sure that this is a message that comes from them. And then directors and managers, we make sure we implement all of their yays. So our stakeholders are so crucial to the next steps for innovative initiatives and processes that we want to take place in our unit. I don't know why that happened. So we have a division that is very specific for marketing, recruitment, and student support. This is in our online unit. We don't utilize our university's standard marketing group. We do not use their student affairs. We do not use their graduate admissions office for lead generation. We take all of this on ourselves. And the reason why we do this is because they don't target an online student. They are not looking at the same factors that an online student is looking for when they're looking for a school, because they can't leave their home. Whatever the reason is, they have a family, they have a career, they're in an area that they actually cannot leave their home. And so an online education is really their best option, but they want a great option, and NYU is a great option. So this unit takes care of marketing. They take care of web and lead generation, meaning that they will nurture a prospect student from the time that they hit that button and say they want more information, and they will follow them all the way through to graduation. We've had students come from some of our corporate clients. One year they came from India, Germany, China. We actually had them come in for graduation. We sent them their caps and gowns. We booked some of their flights and their hotels. We do a lot of that management where we're the liaison between the student and the university. A lot of this that's done on the marketing student support side, they also take on the communication to students, meaning that there are certain things that we'll talk about in compliance that also has to be communicated to the students so they know that there are limitations to what they do. So we'll also have all of our web presence managed by this team as well, and all of the information that we need students to know will happen there. They also are the communication with students when we have to gather data. So we have to gather student locations every year. So someone can move from one state to another and we may not know, and now we're out of compliance. But we have to manage that somehow, and so this group takes care of this as well. So we also have a division for faculty support and course development. They handle all of the technology and pedagogy in building online courses and teaching teachers to teach online. So this is a new realm for a lot of our faculty. We have a lot of scientists and engineers that are really, really brilliant, but not necessarily brilliant to teach online. They don't know the tools that are in front of them. So we take on all of the support training, we take on all of the building of their courses. We just have them bring us your content. We don't have anything to do with the actual content. We have the academic chairs manage whether the content is appropriate. But we take it, we take their vision. We actually go through a storyboarding process. I sort of try to compare it to what it looks like when you're directing a movie. So they give you the script. They have a vision of what it should look like for their audience, and then we build it, and then they work together with our group, our education technologists and instructional designers, to come up with a final product, which is then approved by their academic department. We also have a division that supports all the new growth. So I talked about that we had a corporate sales guy that was hired right after me. He is the one that secures all of our client agreements. Goldman Sachs, IBM, Northrop Grumman, mainly a lot of companies that are in defense or government contracts, mainly because of the disciplines. We are an engineering school, and so computer science, cybersecurity, bioinformatics, those are our top programs. And so these are the disciplines companies are looking for. The agreements that we're putting in place with these companies are education partnerships, meaning that they're supplying education providers like NYU to provide education for their employees, to either fill the gaps or to move them into the next career level for them. What we are giving them back in return are discounts on the sticker price, access to our world-class faculty, access to programs like our Cyber Security Awareness Week, where they have access to new student recruits or interns. We also provide customizable programs, executive education programs, on-site education programs, whether they are master degrees, certificates, or customizable as well. So we do a lot of that business, and so which is a different area for higher ed. I don't know a lot of other schools that do this, and do this with a lot of Fortune 500 companies at this level. It's coming up now. There's a lot of the AT&T program at Georgia Tech, things like that. It's coming up now and it's surfacing in different ways, but we've been doing this for quite some time. We've done a lot of international programs as well. Strategic partnerships, this is actually my area. So I take on all of the initiatives of migrating brand new programs for fully online delivery. I take on a lot of the growth potential for other initiatives, whether they're partnerships with research organizations like Riverside Research or McGraw-Hill. And so I'm in charge of the long-term development and planning of our unit. And I've been responsible for that for my 7 years. And I think that's why we've grown so much, because each sector requires a certain type of manpower and investment. And so I've always been responsible for convincing the executives of our institution of why they need to invest. So I have to get grants from our provost or secure new budget for new initiatives and show ROI every year to year and show our growth year to year as well. I'm also responsible for the liaison between our school and the rest of the university when it's related to managing the online world, because our world is a little bit different, because we have to make sure that we are doing all the right things compliance-wise, program approval-wise, and joint programs with other schools as well. So we want to make sure we're supporting all of those areas, and so that falls under me. And I know I talked a little bit about the funding earlier, and this is sort of just a quick snapshot of how I approach funding. So we are a revenue generating unit. When I first started, we had maybe a few hundred enrollments, and those were blended enrollments. As of 2016, we have 2,000 enrollments a year. We have we don't have that great of a number of pure online heads as yet, but that's growing. We used to have maybe a handful in 2010. Today we have 150. So that's not too bad. For 7 years, we've seen our revenue grow from less than $1.5 million when I first started to 2016, it's 10 million in tuition revenue. And what I've been doing over the last few years is trying to show our financial executives and our dean why certain programs have potential. Where's the ROI? And they have to spend money ahead of time before they see that return. And I have to show analysis every year, showing them where are their pure online heads, what's the difference between our enrollments and which students are purely online, plus show them why online is really meaningful to the school. So I also do an analysis of all of our seat counts. Our seat counts show, and this is a quick analysis of just one semester. And what I was showing to our executives were that almost 80% of our enrollments are seats that they would not have gained if an online was not an option. These were seats that they're pure online students, or an on-campus class, actually an on-campus class of that online class was not available, or the on-campus class was full because there is a capacity and an online seat was open. But if you did not have online, 80% tuition out the window because there isn't an option. So that's how I'm convincing them every year to invest. We invest, and personnel is our biggest challenge. They're not trying to increase the headcount, but showing these sort of analysis is how you establish why it's important to have a unit like this. So Brianna's going to talk about compliance, which her unit is so essential for us to do business. And the reason why that is if we are not meeting the needs federally or nationwide or international, because that's coming too, we may get fined, and then now that hits my budget, and I don't need that.
Thanks, Marlene. So my name is Brianna Bates, and I'm in the Provost Central Office. And I will say we really support everything Marlene's unit does. We didn't have a College of Engineering for years, and in 2014, we completed a merger and acquisition to acquire the Polytechnic Institute of Engineering, where Marlene was working. And at the time, I think you had 5 or 8 online programs?
We actually had 9.
9.
Now we're down to 6, but that's a different story.
And at the time when they merged with NYU, NYU didn't have a lot of online programs. So really, I think when they came in and they had 9, maybe we had 1 other. It was an LLM from our School of Law. And in the past 4 years, we've grown from 9 or 10 online programs to 38 online programs. So it's definitely a very big space. But I will say the way that Marlene's unit is structured to examine ROI and corporate partnerships is very unique. We don't have any other, none of NYU's other 17 degree granting units are structured the way that Marlene's unit is structured. And a lot of them look to her team for leadership and advisement and information on how they can improve. And as a university, when we talk about ROI and revenue generation, to give you a little context, thinking about the nonprofit world and policy and hearing the word revenue sometimes, don't really live in the same world comfortably. And our big concern from a provost office perspective is access and affordability for our students. And when we look at ROI, it's ensuring that a program is breaking even, self-funding, and or generating revenue to the point where they can support their own growth. Because when you launch a new program, you need to hire new faculty. You need to hire more student support services. So if we had a flat revenue stream, it would really hinder the ability to build more programs or build program change or build services so that we could support faculty in taking things online and doing it well. So part of what my unit does at the university is making sure that we don't have duplicative programs that are kind of competing with each other for enrollments that are a drain on university resources. And we also make sure that we don't have programs that are continually running at a sunk cost and costing the university money. Because it's never the case that you want a business school MBA program that's top ranked to be a little over what their cost to run is every year, and maybe teaching education program to be a little under what their program costs, and then have to borrow money from one to the other. And especially in a university space, historically, the autonomy of the individual college is very important, and the autonomy of the individual faculty members who contribute the actual content that is transferred to students when they learn. Those are really the core functions of what we do and the most important part of how we function. So if you think about it historically, of revenue streams and support and who supports who, NYU wasn't built in a day. When we started, we were one college, and now we're 17 very different colleges: College of Nursing, College of Law, College of Medicine, College of Engineering. So as they grew over the years, you used to be your own college, and now you're one of 17 and you have to report to a central office. You were used to having a lot more autonomy at one point. So our role as a central office at the provost level is not to be top down. It's more of a customer service supporting unit to centralize, make things easier, take things off the school's plate so that all 17 schools are not duplicating work and summaries and information. So we really partner with the schools to support them in what they're trying to build and what they're trying to launch. And the reports that Marlene's team generates to show us ROI and show us the gain on every dollar from a grant that we've given to their unit to build something, show us that we should continue to do it, and we do. And they need that support. They used it well. They're going to do it again next year. And if it didn't go well, even having feedback on why it didn't go well is important, so that if another school asked to do the same thing, we can say, hey, let's connect you with that unit. We did something similar. Maybe you guys can work together and try something a little different. Look at the failure report. Let's look at what went well, what didn't go well, and let's see how we can improve and try again in a different way. So we're really there as strategic planning and to navigate external policies from governmental, federal, and state agencies and figure out what we need to do to legally exist and offer the diverse offerings that we offer academically, and then to take that knowledge and translate it into what that means for policies, processes, and procedures at the university, so that things are streamlined and that there's a level of quality control for everything that our university puts out into the world that's accessible to students. So the first thing that I kind of oversee is state approvals and federal government accreditation, and kind of looking from a high perspective of what do they care about. You need to have a certain number of credits to offer a bachelor's degree. This is how many minutes need to happen per credit hour that you grant a student of face time and instruction with a faculty member, and making sure that every proposal that comes through, if a College of Engineering wants to launch a new program and the courses are 3 credits each, do they have enough face time with the faculty or enough interaction in the online portal so that we're legally compliant and the students from a consumer standpoint are getting what the government says they need to get in order to learn. So those are the kind of policies that my team familiarizes ourselves with, and then we created this process at NYU that all of the units go through to make sure that we are always complying with government regulations, because when you're out of compliance, you no longer have access to Title IV funding for your students. So that means your students cannot fill out a FAFSA, cannot have TAP funding from New York State. They would be going to fund their education all through private loans or private financing. And when they do that, the interest rates go up, and it's just not fair to the student. It's essential that we maintain access to Title IV funding so that our students can be supported financially to pursue their education. So what we did, this is kind of just a broad level overview of how we took the state and federal regulations and created a process at NYU for the schools to be able to know exactly what they needed to do to launch something new. So first, the internal school approval process is the faculty senate. They decide on a degree that they want to offer or some change they want to make to a current offering to modernize it, and they'll propose it, they'll discuss it, they'll approve it, they'll work with units like Marlene to make sure it's how they want it to be. And then they'll bring it to academic program review, and they'll look at our website to get direction on what kind of forms they need to complete, what type of processes they need to navigate, what has to happen in order to get this into the registrar system and launch it and be able to enroll students. And sometimes it's very simple. They're just changing a name of a degree to update it and modernize it, and it's a quick 1-month process that doesn't need to go through a committee because it's a formality. But if you're launching an entire new degree, or you're doing a format change to put something that's traditional education brick and mortar online, depending on how complicated it is or if it's a licensed profession, it could take anywhere from 3 to 12 months just from the point where your faculty approved it and finalized it to when we can actually launch it. So they come into our office, we have some forms, they have to report on their plans for revenue, their plans for enrollment growth. Maybe they target 10 students in the cohort the first year, but over the next 5 years they're looking to get to 50. They have to explain how that strategic plan works for them, how they plan to, with those 50 enrollments, staff on to support those 50 students and get the faculty so that there's enough seats available in the classroom, and how they're going to add sections and stuff like that. There's a non-New York State authorization form that takes them through questions that could mean they need to register in different states for certain types of approval if they're a distance education program, or if they have a student going to do internships in other states or externships or clinicals. Curriculum outline forms, which essentially are what exact course numbers the students can enroll in or have to enroll in, and eventually that gets sent to the registrar's office to populate the portal so students can select the course and enroll and understand what they need to do to graduate. And then there's all these state forms, and all these buckets where there's lots of branches on the slides are all things that New York State requires us to do. So we broke it out into different licensed programs, international programs, teacher education, undergraduate certificates, and then certain ones need external subject matter experts to do a program review, and you submit that report to the state to ascertain that it's at a high level within the industry or the sector that it's addressing. From there, we look at the academic assessment plan and make sure that there are learning measures in place so that there's faculty evaluations, student evaluations of the course content, and learning objectives in each course syllabus that can be mapped through curriculum mapping back to the objectives of the program to make sure that the course is actually built structurally, so that, you know, if there's a prerequisite course, it needs to be built and the student needs to know they need to take 100 before 200. And all that stuff needs to be pre-planned before it's ever available for a student to enroll in. So the processes that we have are in place to make sure that all of that stuff has been thought through, all of that stuff has been vetted, that the faculty agree, and that their eyes have seen all these pages, and that they feel comfortable with the structures. And then there's these two internal and internal committees, undergraduate and graduate program committees, are probably the most important part of the process at NYU. Both committees have representatives from every single degree granting unit at NYU. So there's a representative from the College of Engineering, College of Medicine, College of Law, and it's a chance for the proposal to come before a university-wide body and be discussed, be challenged, be questioned, and get a stamp of approval from basically every single unit. Everybody feels comfortable that there's no competition, and it's also a space where they can collaborate and contribute to improve it. A lot of times in these meetings, if they're launching a degree in costume design, maybe the visualization department in one of the other art programs will say, you know, we have a couple courses that could be electives for your students. That would be really great. We would love to contribute there and make those courses available to this program. And we'll see a lot of collaboration and improvement of the offering, because when they operate in a silo up until this point to build the program, it's so big that they might not know of other things that they could add or other centers they should mention in the course book to tell students about what's available. A lot of times right now, entrepreneurship is coming up in these meetings. We have a Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and a lot of different degree programs haven't thought to build that in, but the center is a great resource. So that's something that that gets recommended very often in these spaces. And once it's fully vetted and approved university-wide, my office will take it back and we'll finalize it for state approval, submit it to New York State, get approval back, and make sure it goes to all of the offices in the university that need to know about it. So that includes the alumni relations office, because eventually they're going to have alumni from that program, and we don't want them to put the wrong degree name if we change the degree name. We want them to make sure that they're corresponding with all of our alums and engaging them. Registrar's office, career services, undergraduate admissions, marketing, advertising, recruiting, Office of General Counsel in case there's any legal questions, financial units that handle the billing and revenue streams for how much a tuition credit is. So really we reach all of the units that are academic as well as non-academic to make sure it's a coordinated effort to launch or change anything that happens. The other large part of what we do that influences all of those processes and the work that we partner with Marlene to do to make sure that she can enroll as many students as she can find is compliance. And there's federal compliance and state compliance. And my unit specifically focuses on institutional accreditation and state authorization efforts. So the institutional accreditation for this region for NYU, it's Middle States Commission on Higher Education. And the accreditation is a gatekeeper for the federal government for quality control, assessment, access, and also the gatekeeper for Title IV funding. So the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, will recognize accreditors, and then accreditors will credential schools as being a quality institution that has a stamp of approval that meets minimum standards for the federal government for students to feel comfortable enrolling in. There's checks and audits physically every 10 years. Every 5 years there's a check-in, and annually there's reports. And if there's a problem in between, there could be unannounced site visits or a request for a special report. But I'd say at least 3 times a week we're engaged with our accreditor to make sure we're on track with everything that they need for reporting. And then state authorization is a little more complex and very important when you go into the online space. So the federal government only has a specific scope, and then when you reach the state's borders, it's up to the states to regulate and protect their citizens for consumer protection. And right now in higher education, there's been a bit of mistrust. So you've probably seen in the papers like ITT Tech closed its doors, Corinthian closed its doors. All of these students are left with loan debt but no credentials and no school to log into and attend. And that's a huge problem. And because of things like this that have been happening over the past 5 to 6 years, the agencies are losing trust in each other. The accreditors aren't trusting the states aren't trusting the federal government, so we're seeing a lot of red tape from a policy and compliance perspective. We're seeing increased reports, increased duplicative data requests that we have to send to every single state because they don't trust that the accreditors are intaking the information and assessing it for quality control. Because they're all pointing fingers and saying, why did these schools fail? Who missed this? Who missed their annual financial report? Who missed their quality control issues? Why did they pass their last site visit and show that they were credentialed in quality and had finances to continue to exist? So right now we're seeing a lot of top-down oversight that we've never seen before from the federal government, from accreditors, and from state regulators. And for the state authorization, we literally have to go state by state and review the laws and statutes and regulations. And it's everything from Maryland having a very specific refund policy that students who live in Maryland and take classes in NYU need to be given and granted. That's different than the university policy, which means we need to edit our enrollment agreements that go to Maryland students. And those kind of things my office is aware of from a legal perspective, and it's our job to communicate those to Marlene's unit so that her enrollment agreements are compliant and that, you know, she doesn't get caught with a student complaint from a student from Maryland who wants a refund and wasn't given what they were entitled to because of the state that they're resident to. So those are the kind of things that we navigate, and they're also very expensive. So the state processes, our budget is $500,000 initially to comply nationwide and $250,000 a year to maintain that compliance. Right now, in the past 4 years, we've gone from 0% compliance to 80% compliance, and the last 20% are states where we see low enrollments or they're very expensive to comply in, and the number of enrollments don't rise to the level of the expense to comply. So we've paused and restricted enrollments on those specific states for now, and it's our job to communicate that to the individual schools. So Alabama is a great example of a state that is incredibly expensive and onerous to comply in, and instead of doing that right now, because they've only had one request in the past 4 years from a student from Alabama to enroll in an NYU online program, we've just restricted enrollments. So Marlene's unit also keeps track of the enrollments requests that they get, because if she gets 20 next year from Alabama, we probably should talk, because NYU might need to go ahead and authorize in that state to allow those students to access our educational offerings. So that's the difference between the levels of what we do for compliance. And then in general, I just wanted to share with you some organizations and events that I thought might interest you. If you are interested in policy and keeping your thumb on the pulse of where things are going, what's coming next, these are some organizations that I turn to, or publications that I turn to stay aware, stay abreast of what's happening, and stay in the loop. So the President's Forum happens once a year in Washington, D.C., and it is heavily public policy based. The conversations are about how does policy hinder innovation, why are accreditors failing, what do we need from the federal government to support relationships between state and regional entities, should states have as much control as they do, why do I have to spend $500,000 a year to comply in every individual state. So that's, it's really probably one of my favorite events to go to. And they have university presidents, founders of the Chronicle of Inside Higher Ed that speak at it every year. It's really a heavy hitter panel and a nice room full of colleagues to network with and learn from. The New York Times Schools for Tomorrow conference is right here in New York in Midtown, and they have a lot of conversations about policy. And last year the focus was underserved populations in higher education, and they really brought in students and had students tell their stories about how they got through secondary school and how it wasn't likely for them to attend a post-secondary institution and what their struggles were. And it was great for people like me to be in the audience and really hear firsthand from a student what their problems and challenges were, because then I can take that back to my office and think about what kind of programs do we need to have to better support access and help students identify and take the path to be able to achieve higher education opportunities. And the year before, it was a focus on I think MOOCs and technology, and you know, there were different service providers that I had never heard of before, small startups. The Lumina Foundation was there to talk about the different grants that they're funding in the next 3 to 5 years. Right now they have a big initiative to look at badges and different credentialing other than degree programs. And there were a lot of different companies, even some from South Africa, that are launching some version of a MOOC that's going to compete with a MOOC that I had never heard of before, that are here for these mini 15-minute presentations between presentations to kind of tell you about what's happening in the tech world and the higher ed world and the policy world. So that's a really good one to attend. And then some of the others are organizations. NACUA is an organization of general counsel and attorneys in higher education. So if you work in an office with an attorney on staff, or you have an external law firm on retainer, or you yourself are an attorney, this is a really great organization to get access to, because they really follow state and federal policy changes from Capitol Hill or from state legislatures, and do a lot of white papers, do a lot of reporting. They have a lot of discussion threads about, how is this going to impact my office or my nonprofit organization or my institution, and it is related to higher ed. But it has a lot of conversations about a lot of sectors that higher ed also interacts with. So it's a fascinating portal to have access to. NASAPS and SHIO are both organizations of state regulators. Every state Department of Education, it's different for your home state approval, or for us in New York, it's a very different approval process than for us in Maryland. Your most onerous compliance will be in your home state, because it's your home state's responsibility to quality control you at a higher level, because you're actually operating as a business physically located in their state. But for the other states, they're more worried about what kind of marketing and advertising and recruiting are you doing? Are you unethically recruiting? Are you incentivizing your recruiters to such a high level per enrollment that you're not paying them a living wage? And if so, I'm not okay with that. It's illegal to recruit here. We register all of our recruiters from our Office of Undergraduate Admission and individual schools in the state of Florida. We have to submit our training program that all of our recruiters go through for approval and review, and they have to carry identification cards every time they go to a campus in Florida to recruit, or a high school. And it's, they go through background checks with Florida. We have to write a check to reimburse Florida for that expense, but it's the Florida Department of Higher Education that spearheads that. And NASAPS and SHIO, the member base there is something like the executive director of the Florida Department of Higher Education. So we actually attend those conferences annually to build relationships with those regulators, because at some point I'm going to have to pick up the phone and call and either ask about how I can navigate a sticky situation, apologize that a recruiter that was hired went to Florida without a card, and ask for expedited registering. There's gaps that we always have to close, and some crisis that comes up every day without a doubt. And those are two wonderful places to network with the leadership of Department of Education offices nationwide, and the SHIO one specifically to follow a pulse on the policy of where higher education is going, what they're concerned about. So like this year, it was a very different conference for SHIO. They actually talked about campus safety and gun laws and the Texas open carry policy, and how to deal with that on your campus legally in terms of safety and security of your students, creating safe spaces, how to manage protests, political movements, difference experience between students because of maybe religious tensions that they don't agree with, and some of the concerns that we're experiencing as a nation, but how do we deal with those on a campus? And how do we make them constructive conversations so that our students feel safe and supported and comfortable to communicate about them, and not threatened, but also we're following the law. Like if our state law says we have to allow students to open carry, if you implement a policy that says you can't open carry in this building or this campus, that you could get in some hot water in a lawsuit. So how do you navigate that to protect yourself, but to not end up in the courtroom and with your school name all over the Chronicle and higher ed in a negative way? WCET is an organization that I think is mutually beneficial to Marlene's unit and mine, because it's very technology based and it's so cool and so impressive. Their conference is literally when I tried virtual reality glasses for the first time, and a professor was like, "This is the class that I teach," and I was like, "I'm on a train, I'm in a puddle." So really kind of cutting edge technology, how people are using it in the workplace and in the classroom. I have a lot of keynote speakers from Google talking about what they're doing, what's next, how can we do better, how can we do more, how higher ed should be the first place that people get access to new innovative techniques for technology enhanced learning, not the last place, and how do we reposition ourselves as an industry to get back to where we were, where we used to be leaders of launching things first. And Marlene and I both went to that conference this year, and I think like we had every hour there was like 5 sessions we both wanted to go to. It was just such a cool conference. And they also have subgroups to focus on different things you're interested in. So for my compliance area of state authorization, they have what's called the SAN network, State Authorization Network, and it's a listserv where if Ohio State has a question about compliance in Maryland, or they had some experience where they got expedited approval or found like a loophole in the law, they'll share it on the listserv, and it comes into my inbox so that I stay up to date. So I'm not just talking to my own office, I have ears on 1,000 different universities who are members who are doing the same thing, and we learn from each other. And it's saved us money, it's saved us time, and it's nice to have a colleague to call who might be a step ahead of you in one area, or to help somebody when you're a step ahead in the other area. EDUCAUSE and USDLA are similar to WCET, but more focused, I think, on offerings in IT and CRMs, LMS,
Yes.
different vendors that service. So if you're looking for an offering, or if you're thinking you want to put out an RFP to purchase some kind of offering, those are really great organizations to go to figure out what everybody else is using and how it's going for them. The Chronicle and Inside Higher Ed are just two of the main publications in higher education. So every morning I wake up and read both of those, at least a couple articles from each, and if I can't read the articles, I save them for later, or at the very least scan the headlines. So I never want to walk into a meeting and have someone say, did you hear what happened yesterday at this campus? And for me to just go, no. So it just keeps you informed, and it's really nice to know what's going on in the higher ed community. And Cooley is a law firm that is probably the leading law firm in higher education. If you have any legal issues or you need advisement, for example, when NYU started looking at should we launch MOOCs, Cooley was immediately engaged to say what are the pros and cons, what are the legal implications, what are we responsible for, what kind of things need to be in an enrollment agreement, what kind of things need to be in a contract, do we need data security insurance, like if there's a data breach and all that data is stolen that the students entered, because NYU is a partner with this MOOC provider, are we responsible for that data breach? Who pays to clean up that mess? And Cooley advises us on how to craft a master service agreement with vendors that we engage for technology services, for education services, even for lead generation services, lists that you purchase from students that sit for exams. And they really just are the guru of all questions and things higher ed that could have any risk or liability associated with them. They're also just very nice people. So it's not the case that they will always send you a bill. They have a lot of open resources on their website. They share a lot of their presentations. They present a lot at conferences. And I'd say 50 to 60% of the time, if someone calls them and is not a client, they'll at least spend 15 minutes and tell you a little bit about what they know about the topic. So their website's just really helpful, and they're a firm that we engage and have on retainer and have for years and just really enjoy working with. And everything from Title IX compliance and the Clery Act, campus safety, stuff like that, in addition to academic questions or new endeavors in spaces that maybe we haven't been in before, what we turn to them for. And that's it. That's policy and academic quality control in 10 to 15 minutes flat. So you guys have any questions?